Oh my God, I didn't expect it to be this beautiful. Oh my God, this is awful. Look how many tourists. Oh wow, this is really unique. It's extraordinary. Ah, look at the prices of everything. It's disgusting. Oh, I wish one day I could live here. I tell you what, once you've seen it once, it's not really worth coming back ever again. Davide here. And don't go anywhere, because today the impertinent collector takes you to Venice, Venezia, or La Serenissima, the most serene, as she used to be known in her high days. An extraordinary and unique reality. And yes, Venice is impossible. Impossible with this mass tourism that just spend a couple of hours in the city. Impossible for the cost of living that is affecting not only the tourists but the Venetians. And impossible because nobody really knows what the future holds for Venice in terms of climate change and rising tides. But is also impossible because what we call the city of Venice in reality is a mosaic of 118 different little islands interlinked together by 150 bridges, mostly of them very small one, with the exception of the 4 bridges that cross the Grand Canal. And it's impossible because in its 1600 years of history has never been conquered and never been pillaged, has never been plundered. And yes, Napoleon and his troops entering Venice in 1797, bringing to the end of the Republic of Venice as we know it until then. But it was a very short affair, and Venice later joined the Italian kingdom the way it is. But also is impossible because it's a city that has been thriving for 16th, 17th centuries, despite everything that man and nature has thrown at her. But Venice is also very special to me. You see, I was born 30 kilometers from Venice, in a town of its own beauty called Padova. And all the city in the Veneto region, they are beautiful city. In fact, they are even older of Venice itself. You know, founded by the Romans, and in pre-Roman times they were already inhabited. I'm talking about Padova, Treviso, Vicenza, Verona, Belluno. But Venice is different. Venice represents a window into the world. And so that any nobody has heard of Venice, and anybody who is somebody has been to Venice for centuries. And what else can I tell you about Venice that has not been written in the thousands and thousands of books and all the novels that took place in Venice? The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare, The Invisible City by Italo Calvino, The Aspen Papers by Henry James, Death in Venice by Thomas Mann. And you might also want to pick up some of the books by my old friend Andrea Molesini, A True Venetian. Ciao, Andrea. But Venice always had a special place in my heart and still has. And there are so many stories I could tell you of my escapades in Venice. But I want to share with you an episode that, in my opinion, captures so many aspects of life. Well, certainly my life philosophy the relationship with my late father, this sense of beauty and appreciation that is at the center of the concept of carpe diem, but also what's the value of money. And so this is the little story. To tell the truth, I never had a good relationship with my father when I was living at home. And yet, since I left Italy in my 20s and I moved to London, things starting to evolve and we were rebuilding a relationship based on a new foundation. And maybe he was missing me, the fact that I was no longer at home. Maybe he was surprised that I was making my way in London. Maybe thought I was soft and I wouldn't been able to live by myself in another city, in another country. Or maybe, just maybe, he had come to the realization that, unlike the ordinary characters, the extraordinary characters require more time to develop and requires more time to deliver. Mind you, according to my mom, I haven't started to deliver yet, but let's leave that one for a side. So when I was living in London, coming back home to me was very easy, just a couple of hours flight with EasyJet, a super cheap flight back in the days of these low-fares airlines. And so once, when I got back, I decided to go back to Venice, the city I love the most. And my dad accompanied me. So we went to a nice museum, we went to a nice trattoria that I especially selected off the beaten track. And then in the early afternoon, we'll start making our way towards St. Mark's Square, where we were going to have a coffee at the world-famous Florian Café, probably the oldest coffee shop in the world, established in 1720s. And so this is the scene. It's late September. It's still warm, but there is just a nice breeze. It's around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the tourists are receding like the nasty tide of when Venice encounters the Acqua Alta. And we were sitting on this table outside. Behind us, we had a grand piano with a pianist that was accompanied by 4 or 5 other musicians with a violoncello and a viola. And as the menu came, my dad ordered a cappuccino and I ordered a caffè dell'imperatore. And when the waiter brought back the drinks, then 15 minutes later, my dad had his cappuccino and my drink came up in this champagne cup. My dad looked at me and he asked me, "What is in your drink?" I looked back at him and I said, "Senti papà, listen dad, I know what is in your cappuccino, but as for myself, I'm in Venice with my father, sitting outside the Florian, like true celebrity in incognito. I got St. Mark Basilica on my right, and I got all this beauty, and here comes the menu, and I see coffee of the emperor. I don't need to know what is in it. I don't need to look at the price. That's my drink. That's me." And my dad that was an intelligent and experienced man, looked at me and smiled, and he sort of understood the whole dynamic of when the time frees and nothing matters, and there is beauty, there is love, there is appreciation, and there is awareness that that moment of perfection will not last. It's like a soap bubble. Poof, it will be gone. And so you have to stand still and sip whatever you are drinking and trying to savor the moment. And so, in a sense, that is what is Venice. But also, from my point of view, you see, all the people of what we call terra firma in the Veneto region were just like peasants and traders that were trade among themselves. Nothing more, nothing less. But the Venetians, oh no, the Venetians were international merchants. They were international bankers. They were international diplomats. Nobody could do anything in the Mediterranean without the Venetians either being involved, getting a cut of knowing what was happening. But the Venetians were also thieves. They were pirates. And under the disguise of freedom of opinion and true love for God, they were the most vicious and opportunistic politicians, wrapped in the most exquisite silk that they themselves alone were importing from China and through the Silk Road. And everything had to come through Venice. So, you see, that's my fascination with this extraordinary city. The sense that despite all the troubles that were already there when I was a kid, and I started going there with my parents, and I went back many times, and I made my own friends from there, and I went to visit, and I discovered more and more about Venice. Venice was the world. And indeed, Venice was the world. Venice was basically controlling the Mediterranean basin. And so all the ports were either associated with Venice or doing business with Venice. Nobody could do commerce and trade without Venice getting paid. That was what was unique and special about Venice. And we are talking about Constantinople. We are talking about Crete. We are talking about Rhodes. We are talking about Cyprus. We are talking about Malta. We are talking about the whole of the coast of North Africa. Venice had its controlling ports, and Venice was in control. But how did Venice reach such a peak of power? Why did that not stay and evolve like any other fisherman village? Well, because Venice have discovered the ability to turn dust into gold. And no, I don't mean that I crack the code, the forgiven secret of any self-respected alchemist. They have just learned how to combine sand and silica to make glass. And glass was an extraordinary commodity, not only for the vessel that could be made, but also because they could be made in glass beads. And those glass beads that now we generally call murrine were like very much in demand for jewelry across the whole Mediterranean area, because nobody but the Venetian knew how to do it. And so they would turn the glass into beads. The beads will be sold for gold or silver. The gold and silver will be invested to build a ever-growing fleet of ships. And those ships were for hire to all the superpowers of the time that they wanted to go to Jerusalem, because the way on the land was way more treacherous. And all these barons, all these princes, all these kings, they could have done just shit without the fleet of Venice and without the approval of the Doge of Venice and the Council of the Ten. To the point that, jealous of the power and influence of Venice, imagine France, Spain, and the Pope itself went against Venice. Yeah, they had some victories at the beginning, but Venice reconquered everything all over again. And that is what Venice means to me. This longevity and ability to adapt, to adjust, to change, to transform, to prevail, to lie, and to take advantage, and then deliver beauty and entertainment for his own citizen. Ah, Venice, if I love you. But Venice also had recognized that this glassmaking was quite a dangerous operation, because you have to keep this furnace going all night long, all day long, at a very high temperature. And there are a number of accidents where entire buildings, entire areas of Venice burn. So in the 14th century, all the glassmakers were moved to the island of Murano, where they still are today. But move forward 500 years, and here comes my mom. Yes, because in the 1980s, the Venice government introduced a law where even these few furnaces that have remained had to apply new technology, new special filter, because it was a very polluting industry. And not many of them could actually survive or had access to finance to basically install this high-tech equipment to filter all these toxic fumes. So many simply shut down, and many got together in cooperatives that still operate to these days. But my mom had a spy in all cities. It's really true. You rely, if you are an antique dealer, on people that you know in strategic city that can tell you in advance what's happening here and there. And so she was told by a Venetian friend that one of these major workshops was shutting down and were moving into a cooperative, and they were basically giving away all the stuff that were being accumulated for hundreds of years for peanuts. I can tell you, there was a frenzy when my mom would go with stash of cash, and you'll have to take the train from Padua and then get to Venice, and from Venice getting the Vaporetto, from the Vaporetto getting to Murano. And she had bags and bags, and I accompanied here, my sister accompanied there, my cousin accompanied her, anybody was available, for 50,000 lira, $5, $10 to these days, 10 euros maybe, they would have to go to trying to help her with these bags, because moving glass is incredibly expensive. And so vases, ashtrays, sculpture, you name it. But this workshop kept giving more and more, and you have to be quick. So my mom started to borrow from my dad money to keep buying, and she went back every day, every day, every day. Then she got an agreement with his Venetian friends and asked if she could dump stuff in one of her rooms for facility. And you still imagine have to deal through the complexity of going from Padova to Venice, from Venice to Murano, back to Venice, loaded up the stairs, these big, heavy bags, and then from there slowly taking back to Padova and start selling them with a huge profit. Those were the golden days. Mama, what did you do with all the money? Let's leave that aside. That's why I haven't delivered. Okay, so, but as the rumor of what was happening was spreading, people from all over Italy and even people from all over Europe got access to this warehouse, and stuff was disappearing in a matter of hours. It was going really, really fast. So, but towards the end, my mom realized that in the accumulation of this warehouse, there were bags and bags of these glass beads, what we now call murrine. And some of them, they were like hundreds of years old, and she could tell by the age of the little bags that were there. And the price, well, they were all priced at the same price in kilos. So my mom would go and grab, get into this bag, put in some other bags, and take it away, and take it away, take it away, take it away. Until one day, the whole workshop shut down. And that was the end of it. And my mom had been selling those glass ever since. Even now at home, we have vases that are coming from that particular stash. But when I was moving to Australia, I was stopping in Padova at home, and opening one of the drawers, I discovered some of these old beads. And I asked my Mom, do you still have some of those beads? She said, yes, I have tons scattered all over. Oh, would you be able to put them all together? And then you help me to pick the oldest one, and you make me a necklace. And she did make me a necklace. And this necklace with all these old glass beads, I wanted to be something with a bit of a primitive look. And she did. And I enjoyed it ever since. And so, where is this fabulous and beloved necklace? But my friends, has been with us all along. And here it is. As I open up my shirt, here he comes. He's not Superman, unfortunately, that takes off his shirt. He's just the impertinent collector, showing the necklace with the ancient Venetian beads that were traded across the Mediterranean. And this was not unique to Venice. Any early civilizations, the Egyptian, the Phoenicians, the Greek, the Etruscans, the Romans, they were making and trading them. But Venice took over, and they captured the secret and never shared the secret ever again, to the point that Galileo Galilei had to go to Venice in order to invent the binocular, because only in Venice, and it was considered a state secret, because you can imagine the advantage of having what we call the canocchiale, the mono lens, telescope was. And so he worked with the master glassmakers of the time to make these binoculars. And then he went on top of the Campanile of San Marco, the bell tower, that since then collapsed and rebuilt after 1912, he was able to see the ships far away, and it was considered a miracle. And that's a story. And if you think that that is the end of my story, I want to add something else, because people like me never really stop talking. And so, picture this. I'm living in London. It's 2001, 2002, and with a group of other Italian friends, we decided to do a road trip in America. The master organizer was my friend Giorgio, who planned 16 days across California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and he packed, those thousands of kilometers on this most ridiculous and expensive Cadillac that was drinking like petrol, like there was no tomorrow, like we were in Saudi Arabia, and we do all sort of things and visiting. But one of the stops for a couple of days to recover was Las Vegas. I know, only the impertinent collector can mix Venice with Las Vegas. But we arrived in Vegas around 7, 8 p.m. after 8 hours driving. So we went back to our nice hotel, we refreshed ourselves, we changed, we came down, we had dinner together, and then we had a little map of all the different hotels, and we went on the strip, and we, partially because maybe we had too much of being together, in such a confined space on the car, we decided to go different ways and place our bets on whatever game we pick: blackjack, roulette, slot machines, you name it. And we had agreed to meet again at the Venetian Hotel, that somehow was right at the center, even if nobody knew where it was going. And so we decided to meet there. There was supposed to be like some sort of like a canal mimicking Venice, and we thought that was like a good landmark to meet. And the appointment was set for 4 a.m. So we all went. I quickly disposed of my few hundred US playing roulette. And to be honest, I was bored to death. I wandered around looking all these cards. It's like being in a movie where you are looking for the star, but there is no star. They are all extras, all from around the world. Even that one bored me to death. And then as I wandered around, I found this ridiculous little square that was copying somehow Paris 1950s, with a little table, a little boulangerie, and of all places, of all times, I had some sort of a little breakfast with a croissant, a pain au chocolat, a cappuccino, a cafe au lait. And then, even then, I was bored. And I was hoping that my friends also got bored earlier. And I started to make my way to the Venetian. And so, eventually I arrived, took lift, escalators, on this level. It was a high level of the Venetian. And there was this canal with transparent water and a turquoise bottom. And you had like this replica of this palazzo on the side. And the sky was all painted and lit, that looked like it was coming out from a painting of Canaletto. And if you are familiar with Vegas, there's always spray some oxygen to keep you up, some perfume. The light is always at the right level, so you lose track of time. And it's a labyrinth when you can never get out. So there was this little bridge. And the hilarious thing is that in all this fakery, all the materials were real. You had like wooden beams, but you also have granite and real marble. And so I saw a little bridge, crossing this little canal. So I went on the top of this bridge and I looked down, under the canal underneath me. And I tried to look around to see if I could see my friends finally approaching. And I heard some music in the distance, getting louder, approaching and coming stronger and stronger. And I realized I was familiar with the music. In fact, I was even familiar with the lyrics. Che bella cosa, una giornata e sole, l'aria serena dopo la tempesta. This was O Sole Mio, in a fake Venice with this music coming from some sort of a small radio. Where was it coming from? And here it was. On the horizon, on the corner, a fake gondola with a little engine, electric engine, appeared. And you had a gondolier with his straw hat and his typical Venetian white and red stripes t-shirt, pretending to row in. And there were 2 Asian tourists in the 50s in this fake gondola. And as they approached me, I bent over and I said they waved at me. And I said it was 3 a.m. Where do you come from, I say? And they say to me Korea, South Korea. And you? I felt compelled in a moment of weakness to say, I come from Venice. In a split second, the cameras were out. And you still have the time when you didn't have the camera on the phone. You had the real camera. I could hear from both of them. And I imagine what that picture must have looked like. This moron, leaning over this real marble bridge, a real miniature replica of Venice. And they were on the gondola with the view of these fake buildings. And I said, is this what the future holds? Oh, sadness, outrage, and laughter came to my mind. But, you see, this takes me back to what being an original is all about. What you see here is the real Davide. That's me. My stories are originals. I put them together. My content, down to the editing, is all done by me. And so when you're talking about and thinking about the Venetian or thinking about Venice, which one will probably survive? Most likely the Venetian, unless in 10 years they knock it down and they build a bigger and better Venetian, because that's what happens in America. And as for Venice, might be thinking, who knows? But all I'm saying to you, when I ask you for a like, a subscription or a comment, is to vote for originality. In your life, support originality when you see it. And also, don't be afraid yourself to be original, to be yourself. And finally, if you happen to be in Venice, take the immense pleasure of going to the Café Florian. And yes, is still on the menu. Order Caffè dell'Imperatore, 19 euro. I checked the menu half an hour ago. Order that coffee, look at the square, look at San Marco, and it doesn't matter. I've done that even when I went to Venice by myself. But if you are there with somebody who is special, go there and remember that what enjoying the moment and carpe diem is all about. And this is me, Davide, the impertinent collector with his Venetian necklace. Oh.